Welcome, Democracy for America brothers and sisters, to DFA Night School. We have an exciting and informative call set up for everyone tonight. My name is Alejandro Chavez. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I know a bunch of you have been hearing from me for a while. I'm also the Senior Electoral Campaign Manager here at Democracy for America. Night School is our online campaign skills instruction, where we have some of the savviest campaigners in the movement walk you through virtual trainings on field strategy, volunteer recruitment, coalition building and power mapping, paid and earned media and messaging, finance planning, grassroots fundraising, and so on. We have hosted these before, and we are constantly hearing from people how much they miss these. As well as we know there's a lot of people who are really pissed off at this regime, and they keep asking us, what more can I do? So with such high demand and need, I can honestly say we're back by popular demand. In just a few minutes, we're going to get started. But before we do that, I want to thank you all for joining this call. And, and let you know who else we have on the call that is joining us. So we have you all from all over the country. We have DFA staffers. Some of them you'll meet later on. And we have a few people from behind the scenes that you might not get a chance to hear from or see. And that's Miles, who's going to be working through the slide deck. We got Annie and Peter. So we'll let you meet Mondale and Ruby later on in the call when they're doing the trainings. So what I'm going to do right now is I just want to give you a preview of what's in store for the rest of the agenda. We have a welcoming, which I'm doing right now. Next, we're going to hear from Ruby about the political moment and some of the city work. Then Mondale is going to lead us in a training. And then I'm going to close us out with a wrap-up and some homework. Because what's night school without homework, right? Now, through various sections, we'll try and build in question-answer time. So please be patient while we do that. For those of you who are in the tool and watching us, you can actually use your little toolbox on the right side to ask a question, your control panel. It will say right there, hey, question, you can just write in your question. All right, if that's it, we have nothing else really to cover on that. I don't think you want to hear from me anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to one of my favorite colleagues in the Pacific Northwest. She also is a big fan of chickens, Ruby Reed.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alejandro. I wanted to say thank you to every single person that's joining this training for taking the time to be here with us and for considering running for office. My job at DFA is to support all of our local progressive champions. So I personally really hope that each and every one of you will strongly consider running for school board, city council, mayor, and other crucial local offices like utility boards and transit boards. So in a few minutes, we're going to hear from Latifah Simon, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about our cities program that we've been working so hard on and which Latifah has been a huge part. So one of the most important ways that we can make an impact on our communities is to run for local office. That's why all of you are here tonight, because you know that that's true. All the candidates that I'm going to talk about tonight faced really difficult decisions when they were considering running for office, like Latifah is going to share with you. I bet you may be struggling with some of these questions right now. So before we delve deep into what it takes to run for office, I really wanted to share with you some stories about what our candidates have done as elected leaders for their communities, so you'll know what it can look like on the other side as you're making this important decision. Now, DFA has always endorsed progressive champions like Latifah up and down the ballot in all 50 states from dog catcher to president, but our work to elect progressive champions at the local level is even more important in this moment than ever before. Because of the hateful and dangerous policies coming from the federal level, we need to fortify city leadership and help new leaders make bold progressive changes. Cities and local governments are bastions of resistance against the racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, and anti-Semitic policies of the current regime. Local elected bodies, led by bold progressives, can make tangible changes to protect our most vulnerable community members. For example, cities can pass sanctuary protections and restrict police from being able to coordinate with ICE, like Regina Romero has done as Vice Mayor of Tucson, Arizona. They can protect our kids in schools, like San Francisco School Board President Matt Haney, who led the charge to ensure that all families of students in the public school system know that their schools would never share their kids' immigration status and would not cooperate with ICE in any way. These messages were sent in letters, emails, and recorded phone calls in all different languages so every family would know that their kids would be safe in school. Local leadership can put aside city or county funds to cover the federal funding cuts that we all know are coming down to all kinds of essential services that folks depend on. They can increase the minimum wage, and they can improve conditions for workers like we've seen in many other cities. To give you just one example, DFA helped to elect a slate of progressive champions to the Seattle City Council in 2015. And in the intervening years, we've seen the City Council work together to push through progressive legislation, protect the rights of working families, and fight police brutality in Seattle. Most recently, I'm sure a lot of you have heard, they voted to divest from Wells Fargo because of the bank's investment in the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we have seen how electing bold progressives works to transform cities. We need to deepen and broaden this work, and to do that, we'll need your help. The folks making decisions at the local level must have community members' best interests at heart, and the skills and drive to make sure their vision is implemented. That's why we're encouraging more leaders than ever before to consider if you have what it takes to run for office. Now, 2 years ago, DFA doubled down on our organizing in cities, and we set an ambitious goal to do transformational electoral work to build a reflective democracy in 50 cities over 5 years. This project has been my baby, and it's been wildly successful, so I'm really proud to share just a few highlights from our work in cities over the past 2 years. Now, I would say the greatest takeaway that I've learned from doing this work all across the country over the past few years is that the way to win local elections is by deeply engaging with your community members, sharing a bold progressive vision, and implementing a grassroots field plan. Now, I wish I had time to tell you every single story about all of our progressive champs, but we would literally be here all night. So I just want you to know that there are a lot more stories like this, where regular folks like you decide to run for office, DFA helps them win, and they immediately implement positive changes in their communities. Now, DFA invests significant resources into our local candidates, and we work hard to tailor our support to each campaign by developing the right endorsement package to help you win. So as you're considering a run for office, I want you to know that there are organizations like DFA and people like me out here to help you be a successful first-time candidate and to help you implement progressive reforms when you're elected. Last year, DFA endorsed 32 candidates for local elected office, many of whom were running for the very first time. 16 of them are now representing their constituents as elected officials. This year, we're doubling down to endorse and elect even more local progressive champions, especially progressive champions of color like Chokwe Lumumba, running for mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, and progressive insurgent women like Jackie Traynor, running for mayor of Bolingbrook, Illinois. Their elections are coming up very soon on April 4th, so please stay tuned because we'll be rolling out even more local endorsements in the coming weeks. We plan to invest $500,000 into our Reflective Democracy project over the cycle, and we've already tasted victory. Last week, a slate of everyday folks, just like you and me, won an insurgent campaign to take over the leadership of Berwyn, Illinois. Their plan is to turn it into a sanctuary city. So 8 of those 14 progressive candidates won their elections, including city clerk, treasurer, several city council seats, and a supermajority of trustees. So if you decide to run for office as a bold progressive, we hope to endorse you as part of this program. So DFA is here for regular folks like you and me and Latifah who want to change our communities for the better and build a more reflective, equitable democracy together. So I'm pretty excited to introduce you to my friend Latifah. Latifah Simon never ever thought she would ever run for elected office, but folks in her community kept asking her to run for San Francisco's BART board. Latifah has relied on public transportation for her entire life due to being legally blind. But as a recently widowed single mom with a toddler, now preschooler, she depends on public transit to get to work, to take her daughter to preschool, to do all the things that she needs to do in life. Latifah is keenly aware of the systematic injustices and failings of the Bay Area's transit system. So her friends and community members pretty much dogged her everywhere she went until she finally agreed to run for the BART board. She's going to tell you more about how she made the tough decision to run for office and what it took to win. But before I turn it over to Latifah, I just want you to know that one of the first things she did when she took office was to propose a sanctuary BART policy, which would forbid ICE from detaining or arresting people anywhere on the BART system. So now that you know a little bit more about Latifah and what she stands for, I'd like to ask her to share her experience as a first-time candidate and newly elected BART director, and then you'll have a chance to ask both of us some questions. Latifah, are you out there?
I am here by the skin of my pants, but I'm here. Hi, how you doing?
Great. Go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. It's a real honor to talk to you all about my experiences, and I'm going to try to do it in about 4 minutes, even though it took 18 months, and collectively I feel like my whole life. I'm now 40 years old. I started running when I was 38. I lost my husband at 36. And I have a 5-year-old, and I was a teen mom, so I also have a 21-year-old in college. I myself was raised in an African-American neighborhood in San Francisco, started college 10 years after I graduated from high school, led numerous organizations prior to taking my first college class, had always been an organizer around issues of ending mass incarceration, organizing and leading campaigns built by young women of color who had been inside the juvenile justice systems and had been very, very focused on police accountability work here locally, had amazing mentors, luminaries, truly, now nationally and some local, regular folks who pushed me politically to understand how to really talk and access power, but all the while I was a working class woman running institutions. Very similar to the explanation that Ruby gave, and Ruby is definitely my friend and comrade. She brought me soup when my husband was sick. After Kevin's passing was really at a sort of a crossing point. I had experienced my worst nightmare and became a single mother for the second time, had absolutely no savings, had literally went into bankruptcy, and I had supported candidates along the way in my life, but never, ever thought I wanted to be one until literally on the BART, which is our big transit system here in the Bay Area. It spans about 100 miles, and it spans 3 counties. My district alone, District 7, is 19 cities. But I was on the BART. Again, I don't drive, never had car keys, with my baby, and the BART stopped in the middle of the tunnel. And it really pushed me to think about my collective responsibility to community in this new phase of my life without even knowing and understanding the lines of my district. After hearing for so many years that I should run for BART board, I literally declared in my heart and my spirit on that train that day that I was going to run. And I started running. And the first thing I did, I just had to put it out on Facebook to my friends and community. And we had a pretty big Facebook following, my family, to say, I'm going to run for BART board. And then I started really doing the political education myself, not just about transit, but about transit justice and historically what it's meant to folks in low-income communities to fight for mobility and access and accountability in their transit systems. Many people will denote the story of Rosa Parks as one of those sort of luminaries and activists within the transit justice movement historically in this country, and not as a tired woman, but a woman who understood how transit really interacted with race, place, and power. I started running, and I had the advice from and mentorship from an amazing consultant who told me pretty quickly, I'll help you, but I'm not going to do this for you. I had to raise about $300,000 in 19 cities, again, 3 counties, San Francisco County, Alameda County, and Contra Costa County, very different populations and constituencies who interacted with our transit system in very different ways. And it was, in 18 months, one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've dealt with some hard things in my life. I'll close by saying my lessons learned in the midst of my campaign, again, having no fundraiser, having an iPhone, and a 24-year-old very talented campaign manager, but also very green, the calling every single day asking for money, the talking about myself instead of the issues, why I was qualified instead of the incumbent. It was extremely uncomfortable, having in some ways to be confrontational, to work a full-time day job and wake up at 4 in the morning, get baby to school on BART, and start making calls, being at community meetings in the morning, working a 9 to 5 job, a new job, by the way, that I had just gotten, and then working to 11 o'clock at night every night, and then working all day Saturday and Sunday to be in community with folks, to learn the issues. I was challenged more than I had ever been challenged in my life, and hubris, I learned, was not enough. I discovered halfway into the race that if I didn't win, um, it was so well worth it, because who I was becoming as even a better organizer after 22 years of full-time organizing, I was becoming a better advocate for myself. And as, again, a Black woman growing up working class, raising these babies, not being by myself, I realized that I was actually not by myself. There was so much community that believed in me in moments that I didn't. We won. We won by a 20-point margin in every single city, in 19 cities in 3 counties, partially because of how DFA threw down for me, sending down laptops for volunteers, teaching us how to not only phone bank for dollars, but to phone bank for votes, really pushing me to actually be out there 7 days a week, even when it was very, very difficult, and understanding my articulation of why running a $1.8 billion transit agency was as close to justice as we were going to get, right? Like, it's not just about mayor or city council member. In the case of BART, it was really about restoring faith in a system that was too expensive, clearly that wasn't accountable, and a system that is actually known for killing Oscar Grant. And I can go on and on and on, but I have been to 4, 5 meetings. We're dealing with everything from labor negotiations to fare increases to transit-oriented development to use of force and hiring a new police chief. Like, this is what it is, and I'm so happy that I didn't quit. And if I would have lost, I guarantee you I would have run again, because I was waiting for somebody to show up and show out in this particular position to represent people of color, low-income people, disabled people, and no one was coming. And to this date, on the board, I was at a board meeting today, I am the only person of color on that board in the Bay Area, representing the Bay Area Rapid Transit System out of 9 people. So I'm tired. My shoulder hurts. I have a lot of laundry to do, but political service in every sense of the word is what I now know I'm here to do. And it's good, and I am fulfilled, and I have a lot of work to do. So I'll stop there. Thank you guys for listening, and I, of course, want to take questions or pushback.
Oh, Latifah, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for not quitting. Thank you for all of the hard, difficult things that you had to do to get to this place. I'm so excited for your leadership and this role, and I'm just thrilled that you could be here tonight. It sounds like we have, nobody has posted any questions yet, so I think you guys should be seeing the instructions on how you can ask us a question if you do have one. And you see my phone number and my email address, because like I said, my job is to support folks that are running for local office. So if you think you might want to run or you are already running, you can also follow up with me after this call. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Alejandro. I'm not sure if we do have any questions.
Actually, so we do have time. We're going to take 2 questions from some of our people who are listening to the overflow room. So one of the things that came up was for Latifah. What are your hopes now that you're in office?
I mean, that's such a big question, you know, from the policy perspective to even just representation. You know, my hope is that folks who believe and who are extremely nervous about running for office. I joke, but I'm very serious when I say I don't care if it's water abatement board, PTA, school board, for me, transit board. I was told when I first started running by a neighbor, when I told him I was running for BART board, he laughed at me with his child next to him and said, "You got to start somewhere." And for me, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is about freedom and justice, and this is the most important thing I could be doing right now. And I believe that. So hopefully, I'm going to be in comradeship with a lot of other folks around the country and even locally who step up and take over these positions of critical importance, especially infrastructure positions, elected positions. In terms of what actually is going to happen on the BART board, many of these issues are intractable. I have people sitting next to me on the BART board who have been on the board for 20 plus years, and I have to think, like, why has reform taken so long? So I hope to work so hard that either I don't need to run for this office again, or they don't vote me in back again in re-election, because I really want to shake up the conversations and hopefully change the culture so that we are audacious, but we are also we're judicious about moving fair equity closer, about, if we're going to have a system that takes 500,000 people to and fro every single day, that system feels safe in this political moment for folks, Muslim brothers and sisters, queer folks, undocumented folks, Black and brown young people, et cetera, moving on. And we have a system that actually runs efficiently. If you are a service worker and you're not at work on time, no one's going to believe the BART is late, you're late, and you get fired, even though we have consistent issues with on time. So everything from the actual railroad of BART to the social and political issues that surround mobility and access. My hopes are big. I think, I was told by political mentors, Kamala Harris has been my mentor for years before she was elected to any office, and she's been like, focus on a couple of things. I will. But I also want to have a big global, I want to have global hopes for this system that I'm now in charge of. So I will, really focus, but it's only been 2 months, so I've been getting the lay of the land. But I just want to show folks that, we don't have to be perfect in our purity politics. We can question things while we're learning, and that there's a community that we can always call on. I have many, many hopes.
Thank you so much, Latifah, and appreciate you sharing our experience. Everybody, we're running a little behind time, so we're at the.
Sorry.
No, everyone was so moved. We have a lot of questions. We just don't have a chance to get them all. Your words are so inspiring, and thank you so much for your leadership, Latifah. We really appreciate it.
Well, one of the things I will say, if DFA can put some of those questions on my Facebook page, or even message them, or some way that we can get back to people, or do this again, I'm totally open to keep it super real and honest about what it's taken for me, and want to share every single lesson learned. And the beautiful piece about being in the DFA community is that we are a community. And it's not always just about winning. It's about literally being in the process to fight. And this fight it's not a sprint. It's really a marathon about taking political power back for the people who deserve it most. And those are people who are working class people, middle class people, and people with no voice. We have to be the voices with them, not for them. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you so much. And we might just keep you to that, having you back on.
No, I think it's important.
We got you on a recording. So it's
okay.
Thank you so much, Ruby and Latifah. Now to tell you more about what's considered as you weigh a run for office, and how to launch your campaign effectively. So the training's here. We're ready to get started. I'm going to turn it over to our electoral campaign manager from Mondale Robinson. Mondale leads our purple to blue strategy, working with state legislatures and candidates all over the country. Mondale is originally from North Carolina, but tonight he is calling you from D.C. It's all yours, brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alejandro, Ruby, and also Latifah. Thank you for keeping it super real. So as Alejandro said, I am Mondale Robinson, and I bring greetings. But because the work is so big and our time here is so limited, please forgive me for jumping right in. Count me amongst the first to tell you that running and holding public office can be consuming of time and labor-intensive and financially expensive. But it can also be rewarding and meaningful. And if you use these tips that I'm going to share, if you run on your values, and if you start early, then your decision to run will not only be a meaningful and impactful one, it will be a smart and successful one. I should also say that after you have gone through these tips and answered these questions, you may discover that your gift to the world is not running for office. Instead, you may realize that you are set to be the best finance, field, or compliance campaigner, volunteer, community activist, and or grassroots leader. All of which is okay, because none of these positions are less important than an elected official. Those of us that do this work are aware of the fact that it is impossible to win an election without the grit, strategies, and work of people in all of these roles. For we know that a strong democracy depends on people of all stripes. So my portion of this night training is designed to make easy all things one should consider when contemplating a run for office. We all know that before you are a candidate, there are things that must be done. Let us start by discussing the 5 most important questions a person must ask themselves before they are a candidate. It is of critical import that you understand why you want to run for office. You also need to understand the office, meaning what is it that you are charged with accomplishing if elected to that position. You need to evaluate your core network. You need to understand the time commitment. And finally, you will need to examine your finances. So let's start with why you want to run for office. Let me tell you a story. In 2015, I helped out on a race for district attorney in Mississippi. I was there to assist a young man named Scott Cologne. Scott had never ran for office, probably never even thought about it. He was 34 years old, in a fairly new marriage, and was doing okay career-wise. But he was also a hometown guy who had went off to law school and came back only to realize that some of the people he knew were falling victim to a racist district attorney. The then district attorney, Forrest Allgood, was sentencing black people with trumped up charges, giving people 2 and 3 felonies when they should have been charged with misdemeanors. Allgood was guilty of other horrible things, some of those things so reprehensible you wouldn't even believe them. For example, Allgood left a mentally handicapped man in jail for more than a decade without a trial. Scott decided to run because he felt at his core that this was not how the justice system was supposed to work. He ran because he knew he could bring a fresh approach to the office of district attorney. Scott ran because he was concerned with the direction of his district, the district that he lived in, and how that district was just perpetuating problems instead of correcting them. You too will have to ask yourself, why are you running? What is or isn't happening in your town, county, region, state, or country that you believe you can address in a better way? Because Scott knew why he was running, he was able to articulate in an honest way his message. And his campaign was successful in part because of it. And he knew which seat he needed to run for without questions so he can bring about the change he set out to. It should be said that there's no one path to running. Just as Latifah said, you are not obligated to follow any line from school board to state legislature, then to Congress. To each her own. The path that you should follow is the one that addresses the issues that keep you up at night, your passions. And let that determine which office is the best way for you to effect change. It is important that you approach this process of examining why you were called to do this work in a holistic way. And in doing so, you are required to recognize your strengths as well as your weaknesses. Here are some examples. Do you love raising money, but fear campaigning door to door? Do you have a commitment to social justice, but lack a full policy background in certain areas? Do you have a compelling message, but dread public speaking? You must examine and assess all the positives along with the negatives of your candidacy, and make decisions early on that will help capitalize on your strength and compensate for or help you overcome your weaknesses. The next step is to understand the office. Be sure you understand whether the office is partisan or non-partisan. Ask yourself these questions. How long is the term? What is the time commitment required? Are there any specific requirements to hold the office, like age or residency? What are the important dates for this seat, like the primary and general elections? What do you need to do in order to win? Will it be a plurality or do you need a majority? Are you familiar with the runoff system? What are the specific traits and qualifications a person holding this office must have in order to do a great job? Are there any persons whom have held this office before that you admire? And what did you admire about them? Why are you qualified? For example, are you a retired teacher and you think the school board is lacking a teacher's perspective? Write this down. Actually, write down every reason you think you're qualified. Once you get to this point, you're now ready to evaluate your core network. Your core network can be thought of as two categories, your family and your friends. In talking with your family, have you discussed a potential campaign with your spouse or partner? Now, of course, this is predicated on you having a partner or a spouse. Do not go out and get married and say, well, Mundell said I need to marry you so I can ask if it's okay to run for office. Please don't do that. Please. But in all seriousness, have you and your spouse or partner talked with the rest of your family about what is required as it pertains to time and resources to be a candidate? If you have children, have you mapped out all important dates and thought about potential conflicts? Being a serious candidate means you are in the public eye, often for the first time. But it is an important thing to remember that the you extends to your family as well. Are you prepared for that? Have they prepared for that? Have you talked with them about anything difficult in your personal, financial, or work history that opponents will make it a campaign issue? Now it's time to connect you with your closest friends. These will most likely be your early supporters. So it's important to know if they are on board and what resources are they able to commit in terms of time, skills, and finances. This group should be thought of as your reality check or anti-ego, people who will bring you back to your core values and remind you why you do this work in the first place. People who can help you make a good decision when things become overwhelming. These, amongst others, are reasons you must map out your core network, including your family, friends, mentors, people you share membership to social organizations with, and in some cases, work colleagues. These are assets that new candidates often forget to include. It is worth noting you might want to invest time in knowing if these folks see whatever problem or problems you are looking to address in the same light as you. Next, you want to understand and prepare for the time commitment required to seek this job. Think about your career. Will the campaign conflict with your employment or other responsibilities? This definitely depends on the level of office you're running for. But for federal and statewide candidates, you generally need to assume that you will be a full-time candidate either immediately or fairly soon after you launch the campaign. Also, the more competitive the race is likely to be, the more time you need to be prepared to commit. For any campaign, be it school board, city council, or state legislature, you will need to commit to work weekends and evenings in the very beginning and plan for a more full-time campaigning closer to the election dates. You also need to ask, will campaigning require a leave of absence from your job? How many hours per week will you be able to set aside for campaigning? Is it important to speak with someone, or it is important to speak with someone who has held this office in the past, because this person can accurately articulate the time commitment. Once this is done, you need to examine your finances. Are you current with your local, state, and federal taxes? Do you have outstanding parking tickets or other debts to the local, state, or federal governments that may be turned into campaign issues? This is probably a great time to Google yourself to find out what you look like on the internet. This is something my friend Alejandro always tells people that are thinking about running. As a candidate, you should count on your social media profiles to be combed over time and time again. Also, so many things about your work history, your previous political stances, and personal life will soon become fodder for public eye, even more than before. So you need to prepare potential responses and anticipate likely campaign issues that are sure to arise. Also, you need to realistically project what a run would cost you personally. Are you able to spend some personal finances on this campaign? Will you need to budget for an increased child care expenses or time away from your job? If so, how much? You also need a budget for your campaign. Your budget for your campaign should have one thing as its motive: victory. Your purpose for a campaign budget is to know how much the campaign to win your election costs. A great place to start looking for this information is campaign finance disclosure. As races, these are public documents you should be able to find on your town, city, county, or state website. Understanding how much other candidates have raised and spent in the past, especially successful candidates, will give you a ballpark.
Correct, and that's what I'm trying right now.
Can we pause? If someone is talking, can we all make sure that we are on pause so that no one is missing this information? Thank you. Once again, once all of these questions have been asked and answered, you should be ready to make the decision whether to run for office or not. Once that's out the way, you're ready to focus on the next part of this training, which is steps that I'm going to walk you through that are necessary to launch a campaign. To start, first you need to start a committee and pull together all the necessary paperwork to build a good campaign plan, and then begin gathering resources to be a successful candidate. So let's start by establishing, or talk about what it takes to establish a campaign committee. Whether you are running a small local or 50-state massive campaign, you must establish a political campaign committee. A political campaign committee is one of the first things you need to do as an election candidate. This gives you the ability to collect funds, engage with the party structure, report expenses. This process isn't as complicated as it may sound. Sometimes this occurs after you've turned in your election nomination, petitions to the Board of Elections, and sometimes it occurs before you look up the rules. Be sure to look up the rules for your local race so you know if this occurs before or after you turn in your petitions. So before I go any further, I should say it is important to ensure that you can get on the ballot. You can't win if you're not on the ballot. Of course, the rules for being on the ballot will vary by state and level of office, but often candidates need to collect a certain number of signatures to get on the ballot. A best practice is to collect more signatures, so in the event of any signatures being challenged and subsequently disqualified, you will not come up short. While the details to start a campaign committee will differ slightly from state to state, it is usually as simple as going to your local county board of elections and asking for the form that is necessary to start your campaign committee. Most of the time, you will only need a few pieces of information to fill out your campaign committee form: the office you're running for, the name of your campaign committee, and the name of your campaign treasurer. Different states have different requirements for treasurer. This person needs to be someone you trust, who can sign off on major documentation, and is legally responsible for the campaign's finance and compliance. Often candidates will pick a high-profile endorser or influential community leader as their treasurer, since the treasurer's name is required to be on all of campaign's material. Finding out the name of your office will be the easiest part. The next part, which is establishing a name for your committee, tends to stump candidates. Some candidates even obsess a bit much. You don't want to overthink it, but you also need to make sure it's clear, intuitive, memorable, and consistent with however you're going to brand your overall campaign, because it will appear on all of your campaign literature, flyers, signs, websites, and ads. That means you need to decide what are you going to go by. If you're going by a nickname, you need to make sure that your flyer and your committee name is consistent with that. Once this is all complete, then we can move on to creating a campaign plan. When making your campaign plan, it's basically preparing you to win. You're ready to begin building out the campaign plan structure. There are 6 vital parts to a campaign structure: field organizing, fundraising, communications, political, data, and operation compliance. Every great campaign is built with plans and goals around these 6 areas. But that doesn't necessarily mean a staffer for each of these areas, especially on small grassroots campaigns. I'm not saying that if you have the resources to hire for each of these positions that you shouldn't, but what I'm saying is in a lot of the smaller races, you will fill these positions or volunteer. This, of course, has a lot to do with the size of the election A great example of this is my hometown mayoral election versus Obama's presidential election. The mayoral election at home requires about 347 votes. So a successful candidate is not likely going to need the army that Obama needed to win. Now, it should be said that if you are running for an office that only needs 347 votes to win, but you need a team of 4,000 campaign staffers to convince those 347 voters, you might not be right for the district. Something to think about, I'm just saying. But in all seriousness, building your team to scale will depend on the size of your race and resources on hand. So let us look at these vital parts separately, starting with field organizing. Field organizing focuses on the on-the-ground organizing that is required to personally contact voters through canvassing, which means talking to voters at their home, phone calls, and building local events. Voter contact help builds information on each voter and household so as the campaign can have a better voter target. Properly targeting voters allows campaigns to group voters in proper categories. Are they base supporters, persuadables, or are they voters that support other candidates? Another aspect of field organizing is it brings visibility to the campaign throughout the district. And in doing so, it also acts as a volunteer recruitment arm, allowing the campaign to further expand its message and number of voters that are touched. Next is fundraising. Fundraising focuses on all of the campaign's financial operations and ensures that the campaign always has enough money to operate effectively. The fundraising or financial team usually employs a variety of techniques to raise funds. These techniques vary. They can range from casual fundraising events, phone time, which is designated time for the candidate or other influential supporters to sit and call through their networks to ask for money, to high-priced dinners, to email messages to potential donors, asking them for money as well. Next, we'll move to communication, which is the team that focuses on and oversees press relations, advertising, involved in promoting the campaign. The communication team is also responsible for the campaign's messaging, image, rapid response to any crisis that may occur during the life of the campaign, and they also in place to play the role of press secretary. The communication department is usually a part of the script writing for the field operation, since this too is a message about the candidate and needs to be consistent with all messaging. And in campaigns these days, communication teams often are responsible for social media. Now keep in mind, your communication team may be you and a volunteer. Political team focus on building out the political outreach and endorsements that include researching and developing a set of policies that will be the campaign's platform for the office the candidate is seeking. The political plan also includes outreach to groups and organizations that make endorsements that include labor, environmental groups, reproductive rights, and other organizations of progressive type. Groups like Democracy for America. Political teams are also responsible for providing information to a campaign on issues as well as background of other candidates in the race. This is sometimes referred to as opposition research. Finding out background, strategies, and the strengths and weaknesses of your opposition is what opposition research means. Your political department should also be responsible for applying for endorsements from organizations like DFA, and other groups that would add validity to your candidacy. Next, we'll go to data. Data is the lifeline of a campaign, and good data can win elections. But data mustn't only be good, it must be timely. By timely, I mean when on campaigns, it does not matter how the information of a voter is collected. It must be entered into some system where it can be tracked as soon as possible. The most common system is known as VAN, Voter Action Network. This system is an amazing tool that allows campaigns to target certain groups of voters based on different criteria, including but not limited to gender, ethnicity, age, voting history, and many others. But this system is only as good as the information you enter. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you knock on a voter's door and have a conversation with her. During this conversation, it becomes apparent that this voter is a hardcore supporter of your opponent. If this information is not inputted into your system and you cut another walk list and her name is on that list, you may be helping her to go volunteer for your opponent. And at the very least, if she doesn't volunteer, you're definitely doing two things that aren't so good. One, you're keeping the election fresh on her mind. And two, you're showing that you don't know how to listen very well. This example is meant to show you that not doing data properly will cost you the election one vote at a time. It is critical that your campaign has a rigorous system around data collection and entry. Speaking of data collection, it is so necessary that you have a quality assurance apparatus in place as it pertains to the data you collect on your campaign. Most people that volunteer for you really do care about your victory, and they really are concerned about the work that it takes to win. But there will always be those that will take a walk packet, and instead of talking to voters, they will go sit under a tree for 4 hours and just stare at the sky. It's like they believe the clouds will help you get elected. Then these tree canvassers will come back to you and to the office, and they'll be marked that they spoke with every voter on their list. And all of them support you, except one that they think they may have convinced. A couple of things. If anyone ever brings you a list back and they tell you that they talked to every voter, be wary. Be very wary. And the first words out of your mouth should be, "You mean you talk to everybody?" Likewise, if that same person tells you that every voter supports you, get some gas and use that voter list as a starter for a bonfire. I know it's hard to believe, but everybody will not like you. No one will talk to everyone on their list. In this case, fire is not the proper way to handle this. But quality assurance is the remedy for this incident and many others. That would otherwise result in bad data being entered into the system and the mislabeling of voters. Data handled properly makes your job as a candidate easy. Easy, relative word. Okay, now that we've addressed all of that, the tree canvassers, cloud voters, it's now time to look at the last aspect of our training and then open it up for more questions. Operation and compliance. Some of the essential tasks of this position is to manage the campaign finance, compliance function, and workflow. Meaning, there are tasks ensuring that registration, renewals, termination, disclosure, reports, HR stuff are all filed timely, according with jurisdictional requirements, maybe monthly, bi-monthly, semi-annual, annually, or whatever deadlines that your board finds necessary. This team is also responsible for communicating with the rest of the team about any deadline and disclosure requirements. Operation and compliance also prepare, supports, and maintain campaign finance registration, amendments, periodic disclosure reports. In short, this person or persons serve as subject matter expert for the campaign on all issues related to compliance. Now, with all of this information we've given you, you all are more than ready to become progressive champions and elected officials. I'm certain someone on this call is feeling extremely overwhelmed at the amount of information they just presented. I challenge you to run for office and use DFA as a resource and see how rewarding the process is. See how able you are, and whether you ran 10 times in the past or never, there's one thing I can promise you, and it'll never be made false. If you never try, you can never win. So let us sit, but not for too long, because some deadlines are fast approaching, and some amongst us need to adhere to those deadlines. There are future congresswomen, city council members, and senators on this call. Which one are you? I'm Mondale Robinson, and thank you. Ali, take it away.
All right, Mondale, thank you. So in just a minute, we've had a few questions that can come in. I'm seeing now that there was a glitch. I know that some people were able to hear us, so I'm getting a lot of questions now. We're not sure what happened. So for those of you who switched over to listen to us, this video and our audio will be totally recorded. It'll be up live probably tomorrow for everyone to review. I'll make sure we email it out to everybody. And so for those of you who are listening and now just joined, you can actually put questions in there. And for those of you listening from our overflow room, I have a few questions that have come in, Mondale, if you wouldn't mind taking. Well, I'll tell you what.
Let's do it.
You take the first one, and I'll take the second one because I got a great example for the second one. So, first question for Mondale is from Corey Riley in the Bay Area, who actually voted for Latifah. Latifah's not with us anymore on the call, but Latifah, one of your voters, joined the call. And she was saying that she has Latifah as an elected official. She has a great city council that DFA's endorsed. Ruby, some of your work. She wants to know, what do you do if everyone around you is already a good elected official? What do you do?
So that's a great question. A lot of the times when we live in great spaces like the Bay Area, we have progressive champions up and down the ballot. We tend to become complacent. I would say the best thing to do is remember that being a part of this democracy requires you to go beyond voting. Make sure you're attending all of the meetings that you have time to attend. Make sure you're talking to neighbors about issues that are pertinent to your community, and also you're advocating for those issues and making sure, because even though we know people, our progressive champions are great at what they do, sometimes people need to be held accountable, and it's our job as voters, especially people that voted for these people, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then also we know there's no person that can hold a position forever, so we need to be, either this voter needs to be considering themselves to run or finding someone else to be in line to build this bench that we need for us to be successful throughout.
Fantastic, and I can actually take the second question. The second question was, I'm an atheist, and by polls, this makes me pretty much unelectable in America. Any advice or thoughts on that? And I actually got a great example. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Tempe, we have a young legislator named Juan Mendez, who is, I want to say 32. He's been in the second or third term, state legislator, senator. And the reason Juan is, Senator Mendez is famous or well known is because he actually, on the House floor, said he was not going to read the prayer because he's an atheist. And he read a poem. And it got a lot of coverage. But it just goes to show you that it's actually not just about what the polls say, but it's actually about how hard you work. It's all the things that Mondale talked about. Having a campaign strategy, having volunteers, fundraising, commitment. Also, some of the things we heard Latifah talk about. Doing it, making it to all the meetings, and making those commitments. So Mondale, I know you wanted to jump in, but we actually had a lot of people who got some other questions in, so I definitely want to make room for those people. So, yes, and for those of you who joined or wondering if we're going to have the presentation, we will email it to you, or you can go to democracyforamerica.com/night school. And the presentation we just presented is there for you to flip through on your own. Once again, it's pretty simple. democracyforamerica.com/night school. So Mondale, here's another question for you. I think we answered it already, but I'll let you go ahead and field it. It's, what voter ID system does DFA recommend?
So right now, the most reliable system and universal use system for progressive candidates is the VAN, which stands for Voter Action Network. Usually that access to that system comes from the state Democratic Party. So if you're a Democratic candidate or a progressive leaning candidate, you would just need to reach out to the Democratic Party in your state to get access to that. That system is a system that's based on the voter file, your state voter file, and it is the most comprehensive system we have to use right now.
One thing oh, go ahead, Ruby.
I just want to jump in and say that, yeah, you do need to go through the Democratic Party, and if for some reason, maybe you're a little more progressive than the Democratic Party in your area and they're not really that inclined to give you that voter file access, come talk to us. We would love to help you.
And the other thing I was going to add on is, you don't just need a voter access file. Before we had the VAN, for hundreds of years we've had elections. So, don't be afraid to just knock on everyone's door in your community. Maybe you can register them to vote if they're not. So if you don't have it, don't let it stop you from getting out there and starting the process. Okay, we have another question from Adrian Aaron. And it's, what are some of the most common / biggest mistakes you see in first-time candidates?
Spending 70% of their budget on media and not on voter contact. There's a massive flaw in the way that people that do this work think. For years, we've been told by media consultants, shout out to any media consultants that are on this call, we've been told that the proper way to do a campaign is spending 7% of your budget on TV or radio or advertising. But we see this as a failed strategy over and over and over. The best way to win elections is have conversations at a fraction of the cost with people at their homes. This work change voters' heart, and it's the best way to do it. We see it every year after every election cycle. There's nothing more effective than having a conversation with a person at their door. So when we choose to put media on par or above voter contact, we're hurting ourselves, and we see this over and over with new candidates because of advice from people that get paid from advertising.
Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering, who got on late or had some challenge, we appreciate you being here. We're going to stay on a little bit past the hour to take a few more questions to help me. I see some of that's coming in, so really excited to answer these. And if you'd like to email us, you can actually email us. It's a pretty simple email address. So if you're ready, it is nightschool@democracyforamerica.com. If you have questions or you want to run for office, get it to that, and we'll distribute it through Mondale, Ruby, and myself, and try and get back with you. So once again, it was nightschool@democracyforamerica.com. I'll repeat that periodically, but I do want to keep filtering through these questions because there's a lot of them coming in. So, Mondale from Cecil Hall. For someone very new, inexperienced, what is a good office to start or run for the first time?
It depends. If it depends on the person. I said in my training, and I mean this wholeheartedly, whatever keeps you up at night, whatever issues you're passionate about, you should figure out which office address those issues, and that should be your office. Because let someone tell you that your office should be city council when you should really be running for president. You never know. Abraham Lincoln lost every election he ran on the local level. The only election he ever won was president. So I don't know what the first office is, Adrian. It should be whatever office address the issues that keep you up at night. There's no straight path on how to become an elected official. You should run. You will be more successful running for office that address your passions anyway, rather than me telling you where to start.
Great, I was on mute there. It almost started. All right, here we go. Here's another one. Here's one. Do you suggest moving to another city council district where a sitting council representative is in her 6th term?
I don't suggest doing anything just because someone is in a term, or whatever term they are. I suggest doing things because it's equitable for everybody involved, and also because it's a passion. I don't think terms aren't necessarily a bad thing. I could use another term of Barack Obama right now. So all I'm saying is you should only run if you are passionate about it, not if you're running against someone. Running against someone is not a good reason to run. Make sure you're running on a platform and an issue, and also you're not being ethnocentric, even though you may be in a city and look like the people in that city. Moving to a different district that someone keep being elected by those people just to unseat that person doesn't seem very, I mean, I wouldn't do it, or I wouldn't suggest that being the only reason you run for office. Plus, it sounds expensive to move your whole family just for an election.
Well, Mondale, you've been kind of stingy here with all the questions. So actually, this one's for Ruby. Well, I'll say it for Jules. Meryl Milstein. So, not really me saying this, but she wrote in, I'm running for statewide judgeship in Pennsylvania. Yes, on progressive values. For the first time in my political career, I'm not allowed to ask anyone for money. I must staff it. I must have staff to do it. Does DFA have people who could serve as a finance director? I have a campaign manager, a treasurer, a volunteer coordinator, and a communications director. But I'm having trouble finding a finance director. Love, Jules, that you mentioned you have all those things. Ruby, you want to answer this?
Excellent question. I love that question. I'm psyched that you're running for office. I hope you wrote down my phone number because I would love to talk with you. The first step in the DFA endorsement and getting our support is to apply. There's an application on our website conveniently located under candidates and apply for endorsement. And so we would invite you and anyone else on this call who is already definitely running for office to apply for our endorsement. We'll ask you why you're running, what your DFA values are, what you're fighting for, and we can get started in that process. So for our endorsed candidates, we work really hard to develop specialized endorsement packages. And so I work with all the local candidates. Mondel works with state legislature and statewide candidates, and Alejandro works specifically with our federal candidates. So depending on the level of office, just to answer a little bit more broadly, we develop a package with you that can include things like staff embeds, that can include things like trainings, that can also include, just us putting the word out to people in our network. Hey, this person needs a finance director, this person needs a campaign manager. Sometimes we know people that we think would be a good match for your staff position. So I guess my broad way of answering that question would be, when we endorse candidates, we work really closely with you to make sure that the strengths and resources that DFA have can match up to the needs that you have.
Right. And I know some people are putting in questions again. We're not going to go much longer, so if if you asked a question and then Mondel Ruby gave a great response, you have a follow-up, you need to email us at nightschool@democracyforamerica.com. It'll get to us, I promise. Mondel, it's kind of a question. I'll read it, but I don't think you need to answer it. It says, Mondel, you are so well informed in all the aspects of this business, and you're a young gentleman like you. What are we going to do to get you to run for office? What will it take for you to run? Why not? So we'll let you sit on that while we go find another question from somebody. Let's see here. Here's one. This is a good one. Mondel, I'll leave this one to you. It says, is it ever too old to run? I want to run for school board and a designer. So is it ever too old to run?
No, absolutely not. You run when you're called to run, and I think if you're retired and you have that time, you are a perfect candidate to run. I am an advocate of everybody running for office. We have a participatory democracy, and coming in running seems like the great thing to do. You should do it. Everybody should do it.
All right. Sorry, I forgot to mention who that one was from. So if you asked that question, sorry, I forgot to give you credit on the phone. All right, we're going to take 2 more questions. This one is from Robin Tondra. It says, I live in a strong Republican county. I can only hope to change the minds of the Republicans to be more moderate and not call it progress. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. It's just kind of funny. How do you suggest I approach this? Ruby, I don't see Mondel. He may have had an issue. You want to take this one, Ruby?
I do have some thoughts on this, actually. So one of the things that I have observed is sometimes Democrats that are running in purple or reddish type of districts tack to the right, like we pretend to have this weird sort of right-leaning agenda. And that doesn't work very well because Republican voters want to vote for an actual Republican, right? So you're not going to ever win them by just weird tacking to the right. But what we found is that progressive populist messages that talk about the real issues that people are facing and their real day-to-day practical issues about making sure that they're safe at work, making sure that their kids get a good education, making sure that they can bring home a living wage, those issues actually really do resonate with voters who can be registered as Republican, who can be considered Republican, who can be Republican-leaning independents. So what we found is that the more bold you are about your progressive stance, actually the better your chances are. And your chances go down when you start tacking to the right. I think you might be muted.
Ruby?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Oh. Okay, great. Sorry. Yeah. So there's one other question I want to take here. That was, let me find it here. Last question. It's from Charlie DeLacy. It says, "How do I learn what each political office requires so that if I get elected, I will know my position inside and out.
So I think this question is asking, how do I find out what each political job is like, right? So I would say, honestly, take to the Google, right? So look at, what kind of elected offices are available in your hometown. Sometimes you'll have a board of trustees that runs the city. Sometimes you'll have a mayor that sits as part of the city council. Sometimes you'll have an aldermanic body that has an awful lot more people on it. Sometimes you'll have a small city council, and sometimes you'll have all kinds of different county offices. So I would say to take a look at your city's website, your official city like .gov website, as well as your county website, and that will give you a good sense of, is there a planning commission that you can run for? Is there a transit board? Is there school board, all those different kinds of things. So I don't know of a one-stop shop. If anyone does know of this, I would love to know about it. That would just describe like all the different local offices that you could run for, what they look like. But unfortunately, all I really can recommend to you guys to do is just do some really good research about what offices you're eligible to run for. And again, like Mondell's been saying, it's really important to match what office you run for with what you're passionate about. So what problems do you want to solve should be your first question. And when you know the answer to that, then find out what office you can run for that will let you solve those problems.
Great, thank you. So yes, if you have any more questions, it's nightschool@democracyforamerica.com. Yeah, this email address is back, 14 years ago or 12 years ago. So it's Democracy for America. They didn't think, hey, DFA.com maybe. So if you are calling and you do have any questions or we didn't get a chance to answer it, you can get a hold of us, myself, Ruby, Mondell. If you go to or email us at nightschool@democracyforamerica.com, that will come to us. The web address, if you'd like to see the PowerPoint presentation, is democracyforamerica.com/night school. Once again, for the PowerPoint presentation, democracyforamerica.com/night school. All right. A special thanks to the tech team for running everything. While they were making sure, that everybody was able to hear on the overflow line, we were also working through some of the tech challenges. But we had hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people on the call. And that's just everyone getting ready to run for office. So our progressive change is just around the corner. A special thank you to Latifah Simon for joining the call and sharing her tremendous experience with us. I don't know about you all, but it was very encouraging to me. And to our trainers, Mondell and Ruby, who've been sitting here patiently asking questions and being totally active and engaged. Thank you all for bringing your best. It totally makes a difference. And just to recap some of what we covered, right? Ruby was talking about the cities project and how we can make a huge impact with local elections. And we can use that to fight back against this current regime. And Mondell provided us with all the information we needed to evaluate if we should or should not run. And then once we've evaluated that, how to actually get the ball going. So thank you, Mondell, for that. And in case you were wondering, we're going to have more trainings on things. All the different aspects of the campaign structure that Mondell talked about. We're going to have it on field planning. We're going to have it on messaging and communications and all those types of things, volunteer recruitment, volunteer training. So this is just one piece of the curriculum. So if you're a student and you love school, it sounds like you do because you're at a night school, don't worry, there's going to be more. We're going to give you a chance to get your qualifications and your credentials that you really need to be able to run for office from the people. So now that you've heard some tips about how to run for office, and I know some of you are kind of still weighing this, I have a very simple homework assignment for everybody. It won't take a lot, but it'll definitely start to get you down the pathway if you're ready to run. I want you to write down your strengths and your weaknesses and be honest with yourself. This is a list for yourself. You're going to know what your strengths are. You're going to know what your weaknesses are. So this is a list for you. Be as transparent with yourself as possible. And then I want you to practice with me. I have a 6-year-old son who is great to practice conversations with. He tells me I do great, and he doesn't really know if I do a bad job. But practice what it would be like to tell somebody why you want to run for office. It can be really great practice to try it out loud. Like I said, why you're running can be as simple as you're a parent and you have a child in a school district that doesn't feel their needs are being met. That is plenty of reason to run. Being a person that cares, a person in the community. Those are all active reasons to run. So I know a lot of people are like, well, what can we do next with DFA? We did the night school. What's something else we can do that's next? So we are building a local activist community by hosting a screening in Ava de Reyes, Selma. For some of you who aren't aware, or maybe you've been so busy you didn't know, that on Tuesday was the 56th anniversary, or 52nd anniversary of our Black brothers and sisters leading the march over the Selma Bridge. 52 years ago today, and here we are, fighting for voting rights again. Here we are, fighting for those very, very rights that they fought for then. And we should know that there's a lot you can learn about resistance when you learn about history and you follow the leadership of the 1960s civil rights movement. If we do that, we have all the tools we need to battle against Trump and his cronies. They're nothing new. They're just the latest iteration of white supremacy leading our government. So, I encourage you, this is a great way to meet neighbors. This is a great way to start seeing the people in your community that support your values. So join your friends and neighbors at a screening of Selma. And if there's not one near you, you can host one. You got plenty of time. You'll see the link right there, democracyforamerica.com/Selma. That will allow you to find an event near you, or you'll be able to host your own. So please go there, host, start building. You want to know where you're going to find volunteers? It's having conversations at events like movie parties. Where are you going to find future finance directors, campaign managers, volunteer coordinators, door knockers, somebody who's going to help make lunch for your volunteers because they're walking so much for you. You have to feed them. That's going to be at community meetings like Selma, hosting a Selma event where people will be able to watch and share ideas. So, with no further ado, I'm going to let Mondale and Ruby join me in saying good night, everybody, and thank you for being patient with us while we navigated through this amazing training. Thank you so much. Ruby, Mondale, you want to give a final shout out?
Have a good night, but not before you think about it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.